speaking on Aung San Suu Kyi, we've seen leadership performance and our shortcomings, decision-making process, either rational or irrational or logical thinking, particularly with some decision on recently the case on a candidate list that some prominent figures being not included, like Kokoji or Dr. Nhu Nhu Tin or other prominent leaders are not going to be in the list. As well as some decision that she has made, people are among the dissident groups and opposition can be very critical of our leadership and our performance. Is it worrying?
Well, I know many Democrats in Burma, both in her party and in civil society, who are worried that the leadership style is not sufficiently consultative, open, transparent, and self-confident, that there's too closed a leadership style and not a sufficiently inclusive approach to the management of the party and to the crafting of a broad opposition coalition. I know that many people are worried about this. I think these concerns actually surfaced not that long after she was released from house arrest and began to, mobilize, rebuild the party and so on. One hoped that they would pass and that a different leadership style would eventually develop, but I certainly continue to hear these concerns.
Right.
And it's not for me to judge. I just take note of the fact that many people I respect in Burma, and I repeat, not only in civil society, not only in, say, the 88 generation, but within the NLD, including people who have received nominations to run on her party ticket, are concerned that this is, first of all, not entirely democratic. Second of all, that it's weakening the NLD as a party and keeping it from developing the modern party machinery it needs to be fully competitive in the election and to govern well if it should become the leading party in parliament. So we'll see what happens. I know that it's a long journey and maybe a different style will appear during the election campaign or after the election in the government formation process. But it's a concern I've heard from a number of people.
The clock is ticking, time is running out, and Aung San Suu Kyi is, she's turning 70s, so people are very worried that if she's not there, and then what the NLD is going to be. That's also one of the questions. She doesn't have, and they don't have a coherent political strategy, and they don't have economic strategy once or if they come into power. These are the, I think, grave concerns among the people, among the business people, as well as opposition. These are also a criticism against the NLD by the other side.
So I will say this, in the 4 years and a half, nearly 5 now, that she has been free from this horrible experience of house arrest, she has grown in her involvement in political life by first returning to politics, then running for parliament, then being elected to parliament, then being, frankly, inevitably, a very significant figure in parliament. She has not had to govern the country. She's been a significant player, but she's not had to govern the country. If the NLD wins a large plurality of the seats in parliament, and then basically forms a governing coalition, which I think is a very good possibility if the election is free and fair, then she, as the leader of the NLD, will in essence have to govern. Even if she's not president, she'll likely be Speaker of the lower house or in some major role where she will have a very significant responsibility for governing. And yes, at that point, things will have to change along the lines that your question implies, or I think the NLD will probably suffer a lot of hemorrhaging of public support.
But you talk about long journey, and I met a young generation, and also those who are in 40s and 50s, who spent 15 years, 20 years in prison.
Mm-hmm.
People like Kokoji, Minkonai, Kumya A, Zima Aung, all those people. Are they worried? Their worries are profound. And we're talking about the future generation who are going to be leaders of this country, who are going to dominate and play a very significant position role in the future once Daw Aung San Suu Kyi is out of the political picture. What are the hope? What do you see? Because you've been meeting those people, and some of them are your colleagues and friends and your students. I mean, what do you see the future, and how they're going to shape the country's future? Because it's important that the military, the dynamic of the military and generation, they have a leadership shake-up, and they have a succession process. Sometimes fail, sometimes they're well planned, and generation after generation, and succeed in the top post. And those are the ones in a position who are in 40s or 50s, are the ones in the future, in the next 10 years or 20 years, that they are the ones who had to sit down with those military leaders who may have more exposure and need to negotiate and sit down and talk about more pragmatic terms, how to build the country and how to bring back the democracy and and the freedom to this country.
So I think they'll play multiple roles. Some of these people will enter Parliament, probably. Some of them are on the party list of candidates. You mentioned Zin Marong. She's been nominated. I think she probably has a good chance of winning her constituency. Some of them, yes, probably wanted to be candidates for the NLD in the parliamentary election, and were not given the opportunity to do so. There will be by-elections probably at some point. There'll still be an opportunity down the road for them to be brought in. That's one possibility. Another possibility is, there's just an absolutely huge role, enormous imperative role for democratic leaders of thought and action, for former student leaders like the ones you mentioned, and for other activists and thought leaders to build the democracy that people want to see emerge here in Burma. There's going to need to be a massive effort at civic education. There's going to need to be a massive effort at parliamentary monitoring, government monitoring. There's going to need to be the construction of some kind of policy think tank for the democratic opposition that can advise and support their members of parliament and maybe push the government toward competent and well thought out and socially just policy agenda. And I could go on and on about the needs from outside the government in civil society. So I think there will be people from the broad opposition element in the 88 generation and all of the other protest elements and everybody who struggled and lobbied for democracy who will be brought into the parliament and be brought into the government. There are other people, my sense is Min Ko-naing is one of them, who don't see themselves, at least in the near future, as being in government or being in parliament, who imagine themselves as having a different role, as kind of moral leaders, thought leaders, creative leaders in the society. And then there are other people who will be in civil society and may eventually enter parliament or enter government in a different way. One scenario is more and more of them will gradually be brought into the NLD as the system evolves. Another scenario is if the NLD doesn't perform, if it doesn't modernize, if it doesn't become more inclusive, which I think it will, but if it doesn't, they may decide to form another opposition party and take their chances at some point in the future.
There was some sort of political evolution.
Inevitably,
evolution in terms of dynamic there will be involved and generational changes, right?
Inevitably there will be political evolution. We just don't know what it's going to look like.
But it's very exciting to see.
Yeah, I hope the electoral system will change. I don't think first past the post or pure single member district plurality is a very good system for Burma. It creates too many rigidities and too many concerns about splitting the vote. And, you don't want a situation where the USDP, like in 1990, where the government party wins, 20 or 25% of the vote and 3% of the seats. That's actually not a good situation for democracy. It doesn't give them an incentive to play the democratic game. So, if the elections are reasonably honest, if the democratic forces do well, but the military still has a strong veto power, I could actually see a deal being cut during the life of the next parliament, whereby the NLD agrees to change the electoral system, maybe to a mixed system with a significant proportional element. So they'd give up some of the seat bonus that they are probably going to get from first past the post. And in return, the military agrees to gradually reduce and eliminate its 25% of the seats. That wouldn't be a bad bargain for democracy.
That depends on the skills from both sides.
Of course.
And
yeah.
It's no longer just if Thresherman is no longer there. And I think Aung San Suu Kyi and military are the ones in 2016.
I can
they
only
have to negotiate.
Of course.
Not compromise.
Of course. It's absolutely essential. But I can only tell you this is a long game, okay? Something very dramatic and to many people in Burma, I think deeply disturbing, has happened in the 48 hours before we're having this interview.
Right.
But it's one development in a very long game. The situation after the November elections may look very different than it does now. It may look better, it may look worse. Yeah. The situation a year from now, after the elected government has taken office and begun to govern, may look different again.
Right.
So interests evolve and change, alignments change, people learn to deal with one another. So one needs to imagine how this will unfold over an extended period of time. It's very clear democracy is not going to be achieved fully in the November elections. There are many obstacles that are going to remain over a long period of time, and it's going to require a very good strategy, a lot of persistence, a lot of subtlety, maybe a certain amount of courage and willingness to mobilize at times to push democratic reform in the face of very complicated set of obstacles